This semester, I am helping 6 talented graduate students prepare for their capstone recitals. Some of the recitals are in March, some of them are in May, and some of the students may have a little bit more work to do than others. I'm not pointing any fingers. All of this has really gotten me to think about my role as an educator in motivating students, not only to show up for themselves, but to consistently engage the kind of positive mindset that gets shit done. So today, that's precisely what we're going to talk about: motivation and mindset. Seems like a perfect topic for the beginning of a new year and the beginning of a new semester. Hi, my name is David Sisco. My pronouns are he, him, and you are very welcome to the second season of my podcast, Wholehearted Voice Pedagogy. This podcast is dedicated to the art and practice of teaching singers. It is an extension of my book of the same title, which was released by Routledge Press in July 2025. You can find it on Amazon, Routledge.com, and anywhere you get your books. Our special guest today is Kelli Youngman Singh, a dynamic Broadway performer and life coach. I'm looking forward to her insights on today's topic. But first, let's talk a little bit about motivation and mindset. When I was writing Wholehearted Voice Pedagogy, I really wanted to uplift a cogent philosophy that inspired student motivation. If you're like me, when a student doesn't appear to be motivated, it can be hard to, one, know how to guide them, and two, not take it personally. With the help of some of my fantastic colleagues, I came across motivational interviewing, a technique that is used to change behavior in substance abuse disorders, smoking, weight loss, diabetes care, and more. Motivational interviewing is guided by 4 main principles. First, expressing empathy through the use of reflective listening. In other words, reflecting back the thoughts and feelings expressed by a student or client regarding both their goals and their concerns for reaching those particular goals. Developing discrepancy by examining the gulf between the student and client's goals and their current behavior, which may or may not be yielding the desired results. Avoiding argumentation and direct confrontation, allowing them to be responsible for their desired change. Enrolling with resistance by engaging the student or clients in problem solving, which supports self-efficacy and the possibility of change. One research article I found notes that motivational interviewing emphasizes eliciting the reason for change rather than advising the client of the reasons they should change. In other words, motivational interviewing keeps the student in the driver's seat rather than the teacher taking a more authoritative approach. I use motivational interviewing with students and clients when it seems like they have clear goals but are not taking the necessary steps to achieve them. So more specifically, when it comes to practicing or not practicing, as the case may be, and recital preparation, or even career development concerns. My experience has been that it is more helpful for me to point out disparities in the student's approach in a respectful way and guide them to actions that will lead them to better outcomes. But oftentimes, when I do point out these disparities, students begin to unearth a negative narrative or belief system that is holding them back. Last season, I shared some of my own journey with these kinds of beliefs and what kept me from finding my true voice as a singer and manifesting the career that I wanted. When it comes to mindset, I have 2 very simple questions I ask my students. When you hear that narrative running through your head, whose voice is it? Is it yours? Is it a former teacher's? Is it a parent's? And what would happen if you didn't believe that narrative? What would happen if you made your choices from a different belief system that saw you as worthy, capable, powerful even? Well, it's a lot to unpack here, so it's time for me to introduce today's special guest. Kelli Youngman Singh is a Broadway performer and life coach for high-achieving humans who want success and a life that actually feels good. With a background in professional musical theater and emotional intelligence, she helps clients build self trust, regulate their inner world, and create from clarity rather than pressure. Her work blends grounded spirituality with practical tools for navigating career, relationships, and money without burnout. Known for her warmth, honesty, and depth, Kelli invites people to soften the struggle and expand their identity and step into what's truly possible on their own terms. Kelli, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, David.
Oh my gosh, it's sincerely my honor. I just think so highly of you as a human being and have just really enjoyed being witness to the changes in your life in the last 3 years, especially. But a lot of change and a lot of really good change and exciting change. So I just wanted to kind of lean on you a little bit today for your expertise as someone who's been working vocationally as a life coach, and I was wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about what brought you to that part of your vocation, which still obviously includes performing and other facets.
Yeah, it's so fascinating because I think about this often. People ask me this question often. And it goes back to the fact that I just found personal development and it started changing my life slowly but surely. And, even when I was manifesting my Broadway debut, I started utilizing these tools and concepts and ideas to really welcome in and allow myself to have what I wanted. I think
Mm,
prior to that, I had been really in the hustle and the grind of things, but I started finding these concepts that allowed life to feel good. And so it had such a positive impact on my life. And I started, again, like creating these really cool career things, including my Broadway debut, including tours. And it just kept amplifying my life. And so during the pandemic, when everything shut down, it gave me this opportunity to look at this is something that makes me uniquely me. It's had such a positive impact in my life. How can I do this in a way professionally that I'm paying this forward? And so then during the pandemic, I decided to become a coach, but really what changed everything was hiring my first coach. And
mm,
my very first coach I worked with for about a year and a half. And I started filling in the gaps of not just positivity or not just, you know, intentional conscious creation, but also the emotional systems or internal processes that I could use to be available to all of my human emotions. Because I think up until then, it was sort of like I still was getting stuck in these ideas of doing things right or wrong. Or I don't know,
kind
I
of a
remember,
very binary way of
yes,
thinking. Yeah.
yeah. And I think I also grew up like the principle, it's the principle. And so I was always very um I don't know, I would get a little bit stuck in the in between moments of manifesting big things because I didn't know how to navigate the disappointment as well. I didn't know how to partner with myself and my emotions. There was still a piece of worthiness that I had to sort of expand upon. And once I started working with a coach, it took my understanding of the work to a different depth that truly keeps going. It never stops. And yeah, that was kind of it. I remember one of my good friends at the time, I just saw her from the outside. We had done Flamingo Kid, a world premiere together. And during the pandemic, I just perceived her as crushing it. And I remember catching up with her. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm working with a life coach. I was like, oh my gosh, like I need a life coach. And that was kind of what opened up the possibilities to, again, take this work as seriously as a vocation, but also to give myself permission to build this parallel journey to my acting and performing career. So, yeah.
That's great. Can you maybe spin out a little bit, like, um, for those who are maybe not as familiar, what is a life coach, and what do they do, and what maybe type of training, and that type of thing, certifications, or
Yeah, so I think in simplest terms, a life coach is someone who partners with you to create your wildest dreams.
Hmm.
And I think there's coaches for, a lot of different specific results you want to create. Maybe you work with a weight loss coach or a general life coach or, a business coach. There's all different types of coaches out there. And I think my metric for the kind of coaches I always want to work with are people who, one, have their own coach, but two, they're like in the work. They've created the results you want to create. And
Hmm.
so for me, my work really has been mostly as a general life coach. So people will come to me and I sort of work more on the foundational tools and concepts of emotional management or creating your identity. But that scope can look different depending on who you're working with. And again, it's sort of like even when you're looking for a voice teacher, right? You're looking for someone who maybe aligns with your personal values or just has an energy where you feel comfortable and safe. Because at
Sure.
the end of the day, like it is really, and again, I think there's all different coaches that go to all different depths and levels, but the kind of work I love to do is really deep. And you want to find people who align with your frequency, your energy, and where you feel it's a safe space to expand.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. That has to be a prerequisite, and I think actually that's very similar to what between the work you're doing and the work of a voice teacher. It has to be kind of personality and whatnot aside, and different kind of experiences aside, like that safe space has to be a prerequisite, right? Um,
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely.
I'm wondering if you feel comfortable kind of sharing like the makeup of your clientele. Are you mostly working with creative and performing artists? And then what are some general themes and issues? You've kind of already spoken to some of them maybe, but what are some general things that you kind of see come up for some of your folks?
Yeah, so I think the majority of people I work with are creatives, performers, multi hyphenates, authors, coaches. So it kind of like spreads the spreads the gamut. Is that the is that the
Runs the
expression?
gamut or spreads the
Runs the yeah, yeah. But I think it really depends. Sometimes people come to me in a place where they're feeling a little bit stuck
Hmm.
and they know most of my clients have done enough work to know that they want to feel better. They want things to change, but they're not quite sure how to start making that change.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people will come to me, yeah, when they know they're not quite living into their potential, but they know what that potential is. Other times I'll have clients come to me when they're at their like peak of their career. But that also brings a new set of challenges, right? And a
Sure.
new set of capacity that's required to feel really comfortable receiving and allowing the kind of recognition that they're stepping into. I think, and again, to that point, it's like, I think sometimes we think that when we get to the big thing, when we arrive, that everything's just going to click and fall into place. But again, sometimes similar to my journey, like professionally, things were clicking and aligning, but personally, there were things in my experience that weren't really to my delight. And so, sort of finding the permission and the balance to say, yeah, I am thriving in this way, but my health is suffering right now, or maybe my partnership isn't really reflecting the baseline of the kind of experience I want to have, right? Or maybe I'm not even letting myself think about love because first I need to get my finances in order and then I need to do this, this, and this. So a lot of what it comes down to is decompartmentalizing all these different segments of our life, but allowing them all to coexist at once,
Hmm.
which also then facilitates this expanded authenticity so that we're not sort of gear shifting when we're with our spouse or with our client or with, you know, fans or whatever it is, right? So I think that is a little bit of the spectrum of things. And then also, I think, again, so often we can have these really big dreams. And Depending on what circles you're running in, it could be really easy to be dissuaded from allowing all of these things because it's not the norm to say, well, wait a second. I want to have an extraordinary life and I want all these things. We kind of are given the programming sometimes, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, that you have to pick a lane and you got to commit and you got to do all these things. But I think what I found in my life, and again, what I encourage clients to allow is that if we have the desires for something, there's a way for us to have it. And so then it is really expanding how we're willing to let ourselves think of ourselves and what's possible, not from what we've seen or witnessed or what anyone else has done, but like really truly trusting our intuition and following it so
Hmm.
that the journey can be not only delightful and easeful and of course challenges will come but that we're learning and we're expanding from those challenges rather than slowing down or making that mean something about our dreams.
What I sense from what you're saying is that you're really helping your clients kind of tune in to their lives and really be probably without judgment, but with awareness, right? To tune into their lives and be aware of what's happening. What is what the kind of you know people use different terms, but what the universe is saying, what the room is saying, right? To you, right? That allow you to manifest what you were seeking to manifest. Does that sound
No,
right?
100%. And I think to your point, it is like, again, I don't think anyone wants, like, consciously wants to be living a life that's below their desires. But I think it takes a lot of courage to say these things that are showing up are not to my delight, right?
Yeah.
And to be willing to look at it because sometimes, especially when things are challenging, or and that can happen in great circumstances or in shitty ones, right? I think that can happen in both. But to really look at and to be able to identify this is working for me, this isn't working for me, to make sense of it in a way that has what I call really loving neutrality, right? Where we're not making it
Mhm.
mean anything about us or other people, but we're really just using it as neutral data to make choices that align with the life you want to live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's tricky though. It's to get quiet enough, right?
Yeah.
To actually be able to do that with neutrality is
Well,
tricky.
and I do think that's part of the value of having a life coach. When you have just, I mean, right now I have a coach and a therapist, and just having dedicated space to slow down and actually do that. Because again, I don't think anyone is sitting around with like extra time thinking, like, now would be a great chance to slow down and think about, like, we're all using the time we have in various ways. And again, like consciously moving forward in our dreams and the things we want to pursue. But I think sometimes it is that slowing down to speed up, because if you can slow down and recalibrate to again align who you're being in the world to the actions you're taking and how that's rippling out, that's like that's what changes the trajectory of your life when you are sort of making those micro adjustments in the day to day, not sort of thinking like, oh, I'll figure it out later. Like those
Sure.
adjustments first, and then like it informs where you're heading.
So I would imagine, based just on what we're talking about so far, that helping clients develop a healthy growth mindset is an important part of your work together. And so I was just wondering if you might share some of the ways that you help people find motivation to kind of show up for themselves and manifest their goals. So just maybe some specific
Yeah.
examples.
Well, I think the obstacle is the portal. And so knowing that whatever, like, it starts from this foundation of knowing that whatever is happening for you, right? And like that goes back to like the fundamentals of like life's not happening to me, like life is happening for me. And so I call this like layered learning, because there's always going to be the kind of learning where you're learning information and it's being presented to you and you're gaining the concepts and the tools. But what's so fascinating to me is that when we start having a more expanded awareness, we get to also say, how am I relating even to the learning? Like, how
Mm,
am I relating to this room, to this circumstance, to this conversation? And from that layered learning, you get to start knowing yourself better. Because this kind of work, and I think really life in general, is always you and you. Like, you can think it's about other people, but it's really you and you. And so I think that creating a relationship with even the gap, right? Of like understanding, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be. Understanding that that gap is not a problem, right? If you're not making it mean something about you, that you're incapable, that you're behind, that you're just not talented. If you can create a relationship to the things you need to learn, that is what I'd call like creating a positive bias, right? It's like, oh, now that I know that this is where what I need to learn, like this is amazing. And I watched this happen in a recent workshop that I did as an actor, that so many people were in the room, and again, this isn't a judgment, but just an observation, sort of bumping up against the self criticism, the internal judgment, like the disappointment of feeling like, oh, I thought I was further along, or, any of those kinds of emotions. I don't think are good, bad, right, or wrong, but I think that they're unhelpful. They're like not as useful or effective as creating a relationship to identifying the problem as like a really good thing. Like when we know
mm,
what the problem is or the perceived problem, we can be really curious about solutions, right? And again, like that, I think is what creates the momentum, where it's not like, oh, like I have so far to go. It's like, wow. Like, because the way I left the workshop was like, oh my gosh, I just learned so many things that I didn't even know that I didn't know. And now I'm so excited and I feel more certain about my success, and I know it's going to be inevitable because now I'm seeing these are the skill sets I need to learn. I've identified them. And now it's like a done deal.
right, right.
So,
It becomes less abstract, is what I'm hearing you
yes.
say, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think again, so often we sort of work backwards and we think like, okay, in order to like I'm going to do this so that I can have this so that I could be that, right? And it's really the reverse. I have to be and then start doing so that I have to start being first, which is why I really focus on created identity and deciding ahead of time, like, who do I want to be, right?
Mm.
Because that's going to inform the trajectory differently.
Can
But
you
yeah,
can you say more about created identity?
yeah. So created identity is just not looking at who has my life showed me to be, right? Like what experiences have I had? How does that, and again, it's not wrong because I think we all are experiencing ourselves through life.
Sure.
Um, but created identity is really deciding, like, this is who I would love to be in my life. And then again, reverse engineering what are the kinds of skills, personality traits, characteristics, habits that I want to build that support that identity. Right. So it's not, and I talk about it almost even like name tags. I'll tell my clients, like, what name tag are you wearing right now that you've been wearing
Mm.
your entire life because other people have told you and you've just accepted this is who I am, this is how I am, this is just the way that, like the way that it is for me, which of course we want to like love our inherent unique magic. But I think sometimes we surrender the idea or we don't own as strongly that we really get to decide. And if, I don't know, like if you're like, oh, I'm someone who's always late, or I'm this, or I'm that, or again, like we forget that those are just skills gaps that we can actually learn and create. And when we do that work first, it's like, oh, I can step into being a CEO. I can imagine what it's like when I'm a Tony Award winner. I can see and texturize like who I'm wanting to be. One of my clients is like wanting to be a future Nobel Prize winner. And so it's like, who are you when you already are that international best-selling author? You know, it doesn't come after you've written the book and gotten the awards. You have to decide to be that first, right? And I did have a client who walked into a Tony Award, and that was created months in advance from starting to identify the energy, but also the frequency, the behaviors, the the essence of that person ahead of time, right?
Mm,
So I think going back to your original question about motivation, it's like when you can see that it's done, that it's going to happen for you, and you're not waffling in like, oh, can I do it? Can I not? But you really actively decide, no, this is who I am. Then that belief ends up being the fuel and the momentum rather than waiting for like, well, I'll believe I'm a series regular once I get that role. It's like, no, you got if you want to be that, you got to start being that now.
right.
And then it's inevitable. And then again, the momentum is sort of coming from yourself and your vision and your excitement for the dream rather than feeling the lack or the absence or the not having of the dream. Because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck.
I would imagine that there can be resistance, right, to stepping into that type of curated identity,
Mm.
right? Because um, it asks something from us that is that can be scary, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it's like that famous quote that's always
Our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, it's that we're
that's the
powerful
one.
beyond measure. A hundred
Yes,
percent.
right.
A hundred
Um,
percent.
yeah, that's exactly right. And so like it's there's an audacity about it that I I perceive some may bristle at or feel uncomfortable with, right? And so I'm just wondering, like, what is, if you feel comfortable sharing, what's kind of the process if you have clients that kind of bump into those walls, like what's the process to kind of um, help them zoom out and kind of see the bigger picture to see why they're taking the steps that they're taking, that it's actually, even when there are bumps in the road, that things are actually moving towards that manifested reality.
Yeah. Well, so there are actual systems, and maybe in the simplest way, is that if you just observe any human behavior, our thoughts and our feelings are informing our actions, which are always creating our results.
Right.
Period. Period. And so I feel like when you start understanding or seeing that I don't know, that formula or that process in play, you start seeing like I sometimes I'll say like someone with this thought bubble over here who's like talented and incredible, but they're thinking uh the industry is oversaturated or there's so many people like me. You can just imagine what this person is thinking and feeling and how that's informing their day-to-day life versus someone who's has the exact same skill sets
Yep.
who's thinking my voice is unique. I'm here to tell stories that are purely my own. Like, I mean, these two people are just having different life experience, period.
Yeah.
And I think that so much of it again is not necessarily is it good, bad, right, or wrong, because this person over here who's having challenging thoughts could still be taking all the action. But like, are they enjoying the process? Are they enjoying the journey?
Mm.
You can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey because your brain, when you get there, is still going to be thinking the same thoughts, right? So it does come back to like, and again, there's so much more science about this that it's really quantum physics. And so that's where it's like, there's so much information and knowledge out there about this where it's like, it's not just woo woo anymore. Like there's actual scientific
Right.
measurement for frequency, for understanding that if you look at skin or organs under a microscope, that they're made up of particles and energy, right? So it so much comes down to like, how are you thinking and feeling on a regular basis? Because again, like I'm even thinking about, when they talk to water and they start saying like really mean things to a cup of water, and then they say like really nice things to like another cup of water, and then they freeze it. Like the way the fractal patterns like freeze and they look under the microscope, like it's different, right? So I always say to that, it's like, well, then why don't you just give it a try? Like, why don't you just see if you feel better? Why don't you just, like, again, you don't have to take my word for it, but run
Sure,
a
sure.
little experiment and see what's the result of, of feeling better, you know? Because again, I think we undervalue it, and not to the point of avoiding our emotions and trying to run from them to just be happy. Like it's not about just being happy, and it's not that. But it is when you're in a space of belief, certainty, trust. Like we all know what that feels like, and it feels like we're stretched out and we're available to
Yeah.
things that are coming. I mean, I remember one day I was like rushing to an audition. I was running a little late. I'm like running down the street, carrying my bags. I'm like, I'm rushing. I'm, you know. And again, this isn't about perfection. It's like we're still human beings no matter what.
Sure.
And I'm going down the street and I'm so in my mind about being on time that I don't see that the bus comes right past me, right? And like if I had actually been relaxed and open, it's like, okay, I'm on my way. Maybe I would have turned and saw, oh, this is great. This opportunity to get on this bus to make my journey even simpler is right here. But it's like we have blinders on.
Yeah.
It's like we
Yeah.
have blinders on. And so, yeah, I think again, it's like try it, see how you feel. Notice that, like, once you get going, and if you're doing it from this energy of, like, I am becoming this, I already am that, there is less resistance. And I think the last thing I'll say, David, is like, I don't think the resistance is a problem. And I think that's also one of the things I
Mm.
help my clients understand is like, it's not a problem when the resistance comes up. Again, the obstacle's the portal. So if you are really curious about what is this resistance about and slowing down to really hear what am I thinking that's making me feel resistance? Is it that I'm thinking, there's gatekeepers and I'm never going to get my shot, or I always make it to the end, but I never book the job? Like, what are the thoughts that are creating the drag? And if you eliminate those thoughts, you eliminate some of the drag. And again, becoming the person who can work through resistance is always only going to expand your capacity. We know that so much of life, we're experiencing life through our own lens, through our perspective,
Right.
right? And we were just talking about this last night is like, if you expect a friendly universe, you will experience it. If you expect an unfriendly universe, you will experience it. And
Yep.
and we know that because two people can experience the same events and have totally different internal experiences of that event, right? And so again, like I think of even like Schrodinger's cat experiment, and like this was a science experiment they did, but like it's kind of sad, but they had like a cat in a box with like this poisonous gas, and they could not separate whether the outcome was, that the cat was still alive or the cat had passed. Like, they couldn't separate that from the expectation of the observer. And like, this is where it really does come down to science, and everyone can go do their own independent research about this, but it's like, what you expect you will receive, not because that was always what's going to happen, but because you're expecting it. Which is also, like, on the flip side, you can't receive what you don't believe or expect.
Mm-hmm.
It goes against the laws of the universe.
Right.
Like, you actually have to be willing to believe in what you're asking for. Otherwise, it quite literally can't sync up and find you.
I was just wondering what life lessons you have gathered along the way in your work as both a performing artist and as a life coach, and then what advice might you give voice teachers um, who have students who are struggling with motivation or kind of with that growth mindset we've been talking about?
I think it really, because, as you were saying that, I remembered this audition I was at. Maybe you remember this too. But I was at an audition and I was in the room, and for some reason, it was like I had never sung before. Like, my brain couldn't produce pitches. It was wild. And I remember leaving that room like, what just happened? And I actually saw you at the elevator at Ripley. And it was that moment of like, all right, I'm getting in this voice lesson. Like, we had met through a mutual friend. And
Yeah.
I just happened to see you at that moment. And I followed that nudge. And our work together ended up propelling me into readiness to book Anastasia on Broadway. And so much of what it comes down to, again, is like, it might feel like something horrible is happening, but that could be the catalyst for the next
Mm,
thing. So something I teach my clients is, it's not always literal, right? It's not always literal what's happening, even though it feels, so important, or like, it might not be about this thing right here, but if you trust that it's happening for you, it could be this like slingshot into everything you've asked for and more. So
hmm.
we have to be kind of open to, again, trusting the process, trusting ourselves and our decisions that we've made about who we want to be and where we're going, to know that things are conspiring to support that outcome, right? So that's one. I think, what do I think? I think, what was the second part of the question?
What advice might you have for voice teachers who
Oh,
have students who are struggling with motivation and growth mindset?
yeah. So I think I would encourage them to slow down and just be curious. I think, because it is interesting. I was thinking about this, um, because sometimes clients will come to me and they've had teachers who have just completely discouraged them,
Hmm.
like, completely. And again, I don't think anyone is consciously doing this, but I think it can sometimes be a projection of
Sure.
someone's own fear or their experience, or, I don't think people do this intentionally. Let me just say that. Like, I think most people who are teachers are doing it because they love the craft and they want to be supportive and honest, and, you know create impact with their students. But it is fascinating to hear when sometimes we, I think, mistaken taste for the skills, or what's the right way. And so I think the more, like, and again, even in this class that I was in recently, it was such an important differentiation between, this could be your choice, or this is your unique style, and here's how we support it underneath, right? Like, here's the way you can still be 100% authentically true to your voice, but and work within the skill set of it. Um, because I do think that someone who's struggling with motivation is struggling with belief. And so the more that someone can be held and encouraged, and again, not pushed. I think as a coach, one of the things I learned early on is you have to move at the speed of trust. And so
Mm,
to really honor, and I mean, we've all felt that as like, as a client or a student ourselves, like when we're in a room where the facilitator is really seeing us for our unique self, not trying to compare us to someone who is like me or, has a similar thing going on and trying to sort of make everything fit neatly. But when someone really sees and understands you, it creates, again, that safety we were talking about to really be like, oh, this is me. Right. And I mean, yeah, the best teachers gave me permission to be where I was while still calling me forward. Right. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think it's fine. Again, like being really willing to be present with the person you're with, but then honoring that. And again, because I do also work with clients who are teachers and who are trying to be great facilitators. And I think that sometimes this can stem from their own discomfort or uncertainty about, am I doing the right thing as the teacher? Am I like, so we can sort of, I think on the facilitator side, sometimes also step into the space of making it about us when really it's just
I have
about,
no clue what you're talking about.
but it's like we again, I think it's a human quality. So just being aware of it, that it's like
Yeah.
when we know we're not, even as facilitators, we're not supposed to have all the answers, right? Like as a coach, I'm not sitting here telling my clients this is what you should do, right? But really being like with loving neutrality, like this is the space we're in. Let's be curious, let's explore it. We don't have to know the answers, which also gives the client or student on the other side permission to know they don't have to know all the answers. And it's a discovery,
Yeah.
right? So the more, and again, I really just, I think that when there's that space without pressure, without like, we all as high achievers are trying to excel no matter what. It's like ingrained in us. Like I think it's part of human nature to want to expand and be excellent. But again, to slow that down and say we're not trying to be excellent so we can get over there. Like just by existing, you're already worthy and whole, and now we're just building the skill sets.
Yeah.
So I think that that creates this space for someone's belief to grow at the rate that it's happening, versus like again sort of unintentionally flavoring in not enoughness when someone's already maybe feeling that.
I just wanted to ask you one more question. So in your email signature, you share this quote: "Every moment is a portal to infinite possibilities." You've used that word portal a couple of times. What does that mean to you? And how do you encourage your clients to embrace that mentality?
Well, I think to me that really just invites this deep presence. Like what comes next, to quote Natasha Bedingfield, is just so unwritten. Even like what's next, right? And so often I think our relationship to time distorts the the amount of possibility that's available, because we sort of start locking in, well, okay, this is what's happening this week and next week, and we're sort of not leaving room for spontaneity or the
Mm,
unknown. And again, I think there's value in creating plans and deciding and all of these things, but the expectation or the willingness to be surprised, I think, is where some people get uncomfortable with the uncertainty, because they're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen, versus knowing like the uncertainty is where the magic happens. Because if you knew how everything was going to happen, wouldn't it have already happened the way you thought it was going to come? right? So I think it's on a literal, tangible level, slowing down to know that literally anything could happen at any moment. But then also to be the steward of having the responsibility, the radical responsibility of stepping into to play with that and to say, well, wait, what if I'm wrong? Like so many people are afraid to be wrong. But, and I mean, myself included as a former like know it all, but I've realized in the relationship I now have to that, it's like I love being wrong. Because again, that means there's so much more possibility here, and we can start asking higher quality questions
Yeah.
of ourselves, of the circumstance, of, again, like just simply the possibilities that exist. Because if you're thinking something is a dead end, it will be. Again, going back to that perception, because your brain stops thinking about it in a way that it's like, well, what if you're not, there's no doors? What if there's no hallway? Like, what if we're just in free flowing creative space, which again is just always the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been so rich. Thank you so much for your time today. I knew this was going to be a great conversation, and it has not disappointed.
My pleasure. Really truly, David. I think of you all the time because you have been someone that has been part of my journey, who really believed in me and in the process of creating my life, and yeah, I love the work you're doing, and you're also just such a gift.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
What kinds of problems do you encounter with student motivation and mindset? What tools do you use to redirect students to a more positive path? And do you utilize those same tools when you feel stuck? Sound off. You can email me at wholeheartedvoicepedagogy@gmail.com, or as always, you can find me on the socials. My handles on most platforms are at Sisco Songs or at Wholehearted Voice Pedagogy. I would absolutely love to hear your story. And as always, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share liberally among your friends. I love seeing the ways that this podcast, something I manifested as I wrote my book, continues to grow little by little. More soon. Take care of you.